Today's workshop is going to be split in three main parts. First, I will give you a presentation on the labor market information toolkits. I'm going to say something about its objectives, about how it was designed, about its content, about how it could be used. And then afterwards, I will also show you, because today it's a kind of a premiere. It's the first time we will present it really as a live working tool on the website. It's still in a pilot version, but you are the first people to witness and to also give suggestions and feedback. So we're very enthusiastic about that. I will tell a little bit about myself and about my colleague. So my name is Stephanie DERVISHER. I work for WES Research and Strategy, which is a private research and consultancy firm, and I'm a labor market and education expert. We have been working for Cedefop on the project on ICT and LMI and lifelong guidance. Oh yeah, please join us. Yes, join, come in. I just wait a little bit more. Yeah, you're welcome. You can take a seat. So that's me. We have been doing this project for Cedefop on ICT and LMI. Actually, we did the first project on labor market information and lifelong guidance. And then the second project was on ICT, LMI, and lifelong guidance. I didn't do this project on my own, of course. We did the project with the partners. Lutz Lubitschke is here with me to help during the workshop. He works for Empirica, a German consultancy company, and we also work with other colleagues from QPlan and from Aspire iGen. So that's us. We worked for Cedefop, and it's also through Cedefop that the tools will be further developed and made ready for use by the career guidance community throughout Europe. I would like to start with situating the toolkit on LMI as a starting point. As you all know, probably Cedefop has some key priorities, some key themes where they work on. Lifelong learning is one of their major themes, and within the life learning priority, lifelong guidance is a subject or an important theme that has been supported by Cedefop for already many years. It's under this lifelong guidance topic that the first project on labor market information and lifelong guidance was realized. The final report of this project, you can find it on the website of Cedefop. In that project, we have been focusing on what is labor market information for lifelong guidance, what are quality criteria for labor market for lifelong guidance, and we have done 12 case studies that really bring labor market information to career guidance clients of different types of client groups. And it's actually from that study onwards that we are now on this project. The follow-up project on ICT and LMI has more focused on how to combine ICT, LMI, and lifelong guidance. And I think as an output of this project, it's not just about a study and text and a lot of lines, but the output is something you will be able to consult and use online. It will be translated also to all official EU languages in order to make the tools and the information usable in each country or region. So this is one workshop, and this workshop focuses on the toolkit on labor market information and lifelong guidance. So it's focusing really on the labor market information, labor market intelligence. I will tell a little bit more later on. So the other outputs of the project or the handbook, so that's another workshop, and also the training manuals, and that's a third workshop of all the workshop sessions you can follow today. So if you're interested, you can still also follow one of the others. For those who cannot attend all the workshops, all the information will be available online, and also please don't hesitate to come to us after the workshop or, I don't know, another occasion to ask for more information. So we have an online version, and that has been, a lot of people put many effort to make it ready for today so that we would be able to show it to you. I will go through it to the online, or I will go with you to the online version after I finish the presentation, because otherwise I'm not so handy in like switching screens, and it's a safer option to do it just right away. I already explained to you what is the view of this toolkit as it is now. It's a kind of starting point. It's not a final point, because Cedefop really would like to take the career guidance community, to take ownership of it, to help to feed it, to help to keep it up to date, and especially to use it within the countries, within the regions, not just for EU peer learning, but also in the countries, in the regions, as training materials or other types of use that could be possible. Now we would like to spend or stand still a little bit with what we want what is the general vision behind this toolkit. I think it has already been touched during the conference. Labor market information is quite a complex phenomenon. It has many different elements. It can be labor market statistics, it can be trends. It's also information on occupations, and it's also information on how you can find an occupation, how you can become get to master a certain skill, what are the education pathways, how you can progress in your career, also who can help you in finding your path or your information you need. It's also about equality and diversity issues. So it's quite a broad complex. It's a complex thing, but although it's complex, it's something that everybody needs, and we think it should be made accessible for all. And this toolkit is one of the many, of course, but one tool that can be used to support career practitioners in making labor market information accessible for themselves, but also for their clients. It's not meant to be an exhaustive tool, having all the knowledge or presenting all studies or all examples, but it's more a tool like sending out some key messages, providing some key tips, and actually as a kind of self-reflection also maybe, or a sort of reference point for further work. So this was the global idea behind this. We have also some specific objectives that we would like to reach with this toolkit. The first one is to raise awareness. Aware that is necessary, because in many cases career practitioners are very aware of the fact that as the labor market is changing so fast, we have new professions, we have professions disappearing, we have new skills, so it's changing so fast. So actually it's very important to keep in touch with this labor market and how it's evolving and what it will demand from students and professional workers later on. And also about all the opportunities that the new technologies and ICT offer to career practitioners for even doing better their job than it used to be. So as I also told you already, we want to provide some basic insights, some key tips, some takeaways to get going if you want immediately, and also provide an overview of useful resources, tools, studies, examples. The information is meant to be complementary with other existing tools. It's not to be a duplication. We also refer to the handbook, to training manuals, to other studies. And the target group, we have been discussing throughout the years about who should be the target group of this toolkit, and we decided that the career practitioners themselves are the main target group. So it's like, yeah, meant for the average, although you cannot, it doesn't exist, but it's meant for the average career practitioner. It can be someone that who's quite new to the job, but it can also be for someone that has already some experience, and as a kind of a refreshment or something like that. We spent quite some time also on designing it. We chose a stepwise approach, like first making a structure and then trying to fill in the structure. And we had some design principles guiding us through this design process. And first of all, that we wanted it to be a toolkit that is actually underpinned by evidence that is available from literature studies, and also based on the case study research the team did themselves. So this is also important. There is an evidence base behind this project. We also wanted to apply the principles of user-centered design. Of course, it's still in its beta version, so it will need to go through a process of validation. It has already gone through a small validation process, but it will go through a deeper validation process once career practitioners start using it in the countries. But it has to be, the principle is user-centered design. And we opted for a simple structure, not too large, not too complex. We want something you can read it online, actually. It's not, there is a function also to export it to a PDF, but in a way it should be able to read it online or even on your mobile phone. That's the idea behind it. Probably there are points to improve in order to reach the ambition, but that's the idea. Country-specific information, that's a very important point, of course. This toolkit, the text itself, it's meant as a kind of a general text that should bring something to every career practitioner in Europe. Of course, you will see there are also examples of cases from different countries, from Finland, from Belgium, from Latvia. And of course, if you go to the examples in the website, it's in the native language of that country. But we decided to keep these examples in because you have now the possibility, if you use your right mouse knob, you can, mouse button, sorry, I'm mixing Dutch and English, and you can have an immediate translation of the page. The quality of these translations have improved over the years, so we think it's still an option just to do it like that. You will see there's also there's a specific part on where can I find more information, and there we listed some European resources by Cedefop, by Commission, by EURES, by EGPN, by all the networks that are there, and also a country-specific button. And you will see it's still empty, and that's one of the purposes of today, to get your ideas on how to fill it. But in the country-specific information, there is the purpose to have for each country the main entry points on this subject that will be fed in there. So languages, the toolkit itself, the main text will be translated to all the official languages, and explain to you what you can do if you have a problem. So architecture design, I told you it's a beta version. There will be some further developments, and as simple as clear as possible, also with a view on the maintenance. Because if you create a tool that is European-wide, and it has a lot of links, if half of the links is not working anymore or it's out of date, it's very annoying for people when they use it. So yeah, it's a tool, it's there, but there will also need to a management and a maintenance process behind it. I think also in close collaboration with the member states or Euro guidance or other partners that could be appointed in order to keep it dynamic and up to date, and as we actually want labor market information to be. So for the time, no worries. For the time being, it's hosted, well, or I think it's hosted by Cedefop. It will be open to all, and in order to have this collaboration with the member states, in some countries there are different institutions that are responsible for guidance in education or guidance in employment. So sometimes it can be an issue on make sure that everyone is connected and can bring his information into the tool or the project or the network that is going to use it. You will see that what our team did was to have this reflection, and we designed the toolkit. We wrote the content, and we also developed the wireframes, and then we transferred the wireframes to Cedefop, and I think the web development team of Cedefop did a great job in translating it into a hopefully attractive design. This is how it looks. I will show you live just within a few minutes. So it has the text and some information, and this is the way we designed the information page. What kind of information is included? It's a question and answer type of tool. There are 6 main questions that the tool includes. The first one is what is this toolkit about? Of course, it's an introduction. Then the second question is what is labor market information for lifelong guidance? We provide a definition and quality criteria. The third question is how can you integrate labor market information into your guidance with some key principles and ideas. What kind of labor market information skills do you need as a career practitioner? How can you acquire these skills? The fifth question is how can you work with groups with special needs? That's also a topic where there's a lot of interest and questions there. So we also highlight or at least signal the importance of this point without having an answer to all questions, of course, but it's a main topic, and so it should be considered very important. And then we have the information and further references and further resources to general European sources and the country-specific information that can be added. So how can it be used? Because that's the most important thing. If you design something, its purpose is to have it used. And it's good because it's online. It can be monitored if it's used and how much it is used later on. So we consider it as a stepping stone for experienced and less experienced career practitioners. We want to provide inspiration, also bring some knowledge. You can start it as a reference point and integrate it in your own national information system. That's a possibility. It could be a self-study tool. It could be even if you decide you want to develop your own LMI and ICT project, it could be used as a kind of benchmark to check whether what you had in mind fulfills, for instance, the quality criteria of labor market information. It could be a tool in like supporting intervisions or interactions between career practitioners. These are just some ideas we have, but of course it's up to your experts and your practitioners to feed it in. So this is a bit the introduction. I wanted to give to you some background information. I think we do have some time for a question if you like before going to the, I'm looking at Lutz because just be severe if it's necessary. Maybe I first go to the, I want to show you online how it works. there it is. So this is the pilot website. And you can make a choice. You go for the labor market information tool, for the handbook, for the training modules. So for each question, it's quite simple. It's just a question, you click it, and the information is there. It's not with many layers behind it. So if you want, you can use your smartphone, use the link, and then check out for yourself. I don't know if there are any general question you would like to bring. Otherwise, I suggest we go to I explain a little bit how we would like to work with the small groups. Any general question?
Well, I'd be particularly interested in the integrated LMI in your guidance activities, because that seems to be the critical thing, isn't it?
It's the critical thing. It is indeed. There were some different topics here. It's some general things on how, where, at what points in your career guidance process can you use the labor market information? What is it useful for? We also refer to the basic reference guides, to the competence profile of career practitioners. And we also have some interesting results that came up from the case study research. For instance, we have noticed that career practitioners really like one place where all information is kind of gathered, although that is very difficult because labor market information is quite broad, but at least one starting point where they can start working. But if it's not available in your country, in your region, then it's good that every career practitioner can have his own preferred set of labor market information tools where he works his way around when he's working with the clients. And we also give some examples of tools or practices in Europe that also not only have information but also provide guidance for career practitioners on how to use the information they have inside their initiative.
I have one question.
Yes.
This is a tool, but there is not actually this labor market information.
No.
Is it? No.
The information is it's a meta tool. It's
meta tool.
Because it's not there were so many existing good databases. This is the skills panorama. There is at the European Union, there's Eurostat. Here is you have within each country the national statistical sources.
Okay. Yes, so because I was dreaming that this will help everybody, and you can find all the information from there. All right.
Yes, I understand, but okay, thank you. What we have. So what we have prepared now for you to discuss among your group or with your table It's old-fashioned paper and pencil. We kind of anticipated that sometimes some things don't work, and we just have something not ICT, but that can still be effective, I think. We have prepared 4 questions. So I just tell a little bit about the questions. Of course, we want your general feedback, your suggestions, your feelings about this first introduction to the tool, but that's maybe the last question. We start with a question on the national resources. We think it's quite important to have it also localized, to have career practitioners recognizing also their questions and their issues. But what kind of resources would you include from your experience? So we would be interested to know. Also, how can you imagine the process behind it to keep it up to date? So that's also, that's a second question. Also, how can you make it available for career practitioners or make it known within your country? So that's a question we also have. And then the last question goes on anything you would like to give as a feedback, as a suggestion. Because as Pedro was also telling this morning, this is still a process in development, so we can still do things to add. So we give you some time to, well, know each other, learn to know each other, if that would not be the case yet, and then to, you can write for each, oh yes, sorry. One thing I forgot, you can write maybe someone can take the notes, write the answers on the paper, and then afterwards we would like to do a tour of each table just to listen what would be your main answers or ideas as an input. We will collect all this and then also, of course, bring it back to Cedefop for further reflection. So thank you, and you can start. Go ahead. I'm here for questions or any help you need.
In terms of timing, may I propose we have an hour from now on, that we spend half an hour to discuss, note down things, and then we spend another half an hour really to talk about what each group has discussed. Yeah. Okay. So because you by now might have realized, so this is not present, giving you all the solutions to the problems we have been discussing during the last days. This is really a kind of starting point, grasping your brain and your ideas, how this kind of, let's call it a shell, can be made a useful and living toolkit and instrument, because this step needs to be still achieved. It has not yet been achieved.
Any volunteers for writing down?
We have to be first.
Research and design of these
So you are the only, so far the only. Well, actually, this is not a tool, which is more like an instruction how I can use things like a mind. Okay, the idea is that this is for people like you who are yeah. There is national providing something to say about okay, well, this and that and that. Yeah, I think that it's not a tool. No, it's not a tool. It's actually more like research. I thought actually rather than people doing research, we try to serve all we're typing speeches so I actually I have to look through all of them more potentially would be more useful because I think probably practitioners, at least the ones I know this is also a high
they want to know.
I don't think
They don't want to know.
it should be. Okay, that's my first I don't know. No, I don't. Not because I have my job. But because we are some examples. Because I that, I think it's, if you're the one, I would describe it as interesting in this, because it's, it's really a someone who designs so in that sense, well, unless actually it's very easy. That's one of the exercises we could write down the research that should be that's what they are expecting from us. And this is not about control. They will, they tell you will write down Polish research that could be referenced, and that will be
Should we try to
yes, that's but I just say something that this is also
iseenesest need konkreetselt, mis on välja tulnud pidevalt töös, et need ei ole sellised, et need on niisugused rollid. Noh, kuna ilmselt mingid spetsialistid kuskile ei panna, kes seal kogu aeg valvel on, et siis pigem me kasutamegi ainult selliseid linke, kus on usaldusväärsed ja pidevalt tuvastatud. Sellist võimalust ei ole, et need on väga konkreetsed usaldusväärsed võtta ja pidevalt esindaja vastutab, et
and that's what they ask. Well, I was worried about that because today's this period, isn't it?
uue töötaja programmis, eks, et alati on väga suur töötaja, siis iseenesest nii ta ju tegelikult käib, tutvustatakse, eks, mis kus peab
No, well, naturally, this would be, yes, someone who's right now, actually, this is the process, but then but I think they don't This is a bit tricky because it's
ongi see, et sul on nagu alguses mingi väike lühiülevaade, et sa tead, mis see on, eks ju, ja siis on sul võimalik edasi sealt tundida pikemalt. Ma ei tea ju, võib-olla ma midagi tegelikult tean seda, ma loen nagu selline abstraktne väike, et see on see teema ja siis ta tingib sealt pikemalt. Ametlik andmebaas. Ja kui ta on lühidalt ja siis kui ma edasi klikin, siis tuleb siin ka okei, ma saan ka aru, et see praegu nad on I probably won't do that.
But then there are some ways the value framework, some of them may even have a PhD.
tegelikult ma arvan, et meie ikka selle taha inimestel ei ole sellist, esiteks ei ole nagu inimressurssid, kui õieti võtta midagi tõlkida sellisena, et päriselt kasutada, siis ei saa olla niimoodi, et noh, okei, ma siin on enam-vähem olema korralikult
Raising awareness about the point LMI should not be derived of the communal context. To make that we should not be suggestion. When you go back,
ja siis vahetult oli toimunud just Estonia riigivalimine ja siis üks hetk vaatas, Keskerakonna too. Üks selline käekiri on, mulle pärast sõna aga tema läks Estoniaga põhja. See ei ole naljakas, mis see siis nagu võiks ideaalne, mis see selle siin otsa mitte, mis see on nagu ma peaks ka midagi kindlasti juhtuma. Ega siingi kauaks sellist inimeste saaks. Ja käekiri kui see on järelikult projekt. Seda see on ära valmis ja siis aga selleks peab tõesti olema keegi, kes seda veab, kes vastutab. See on võib-olla küsimus, kas see on ette nähtud või ette näha. kõigil on oma arvutid, võtavad ja salvestavad selle endale kuskile ära. Ja see on uuendused ka. Kas me hakkame Yes. I think we are free.
So I mean, That's okay. The other option is okay. Very useful. You know, I would say us telling you what these are the resources, go to this central place, and there you can find the guidelines, and among the 15 other things, you can find our, I mean, this is something we should provide. Yes, I'm trying to. Maybe change the
Okay, thank you all very much. Thank you all very much for your discussion and reflection, and also very useful questions to take with us. I think it's always interesting to listen to each other about what has been discussed. So I suggest you take the table, as we would say, and I would like to start with the first group on my left. Maybe is it necessary to have the microphone?
Yes, it's better for other viewers to hear you then.
So this is the microphone for the presenter of the group. This is the microphone for the presenter of the group, and we can pass it on then when you're finished.
As a typical practitioner.
Okay. Okay, okay, hello, and we were a very interactive group, so let us share our lines with you. The first question, what kind of national resources would you include in the toolkit? First point, all the international organizations dealing with LMI. Second point, the national statistics related to each country and related legislation. As an example, how to start a business or other things, and also employment sites. This is our responses for the first question.
Yeah, thank you. And it's very interesting you mentioned legislation and social security, because sometimes we think about statistics, but also your rights and obligations as an employee and entrepreneurship. It's quite interesting.
Sorry, I turned my back to you, but I just, yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, the second question, how would you keep the national resources and links up to date? We thought, as the first point, it might be interesting to designate responsible bodies to update and maintain. Not only interesting, but necessary. And also reviewing the resources available for this process, because funding is also an important dimension in this respect. And also the system needs to be designed in a way to review the data at certain intervals, and it is called, as you know, broken links warnings. So we feel that it's important. And this should not be the role of the CarriersNet experts, which is a newly established group in Cedefop, as we are members, some of us are members of that.
Okay.
So
and if not, and then whose would it be? Did you have a suggestion for that?
One of the things we felt was that because the organisations at national level who have responsibility for providing statistics, so in Ireland, for example, the Central Statistics Office, but we also have an organisation, a national organisation called Solus, who have a role in providing this information in a useful way. There may be other equivalents across Europe who are doing it anyway. Whereas in our organisation, we'd have to go looking for it. We wouldn't have the authority to share it. So I think Cedefop would be able to make those connections with those organisations at member state level. So each country could give you possibly the name of who that might be.
Yeah, but you're right, it's necessary to have this process behind it.
For the third question, we thought trainings could be supportive for this process, and also the context of the toolkit needs to be translated to member state languages. And marketing and dissemination of the toolkit is important in this respect. And also, as an example, Euro Guidance could support this. Links in the new Euro Guidance website and also in national websites of the related stakeholders could be helpful for this process. As the suggestions on the fourth question, it should be made very clear what LMI is in the website. And linking it to national statistics on labor market information is crucial and pivotal in this respect. And this website needs to be very clear on their goal and what they aim to. You know, we feel that it needs to be improved.
Because it's not entirely clear yet.
Yeah, it needs to be improved in that, so that it will be clear to the audience, to the target groups. And also, it might be good to give links to the Learning Opportunities portal of the Commission. And also, in relation with the second point we made, the third point, in relation to aims and goals, it would be good to improve the definition of the LMI in the website. And final point, what should be included in the country sections need to be clarified, so that each country will have the same set of information, set of links, whatever. There should be a continuity and also
kind of a framework, you think,
for each country. Okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
That's valuable. Thank you very much. We'll take all the suggestions. We will put them on notes, and then maybe they can even share it afterwards. I don't know. Well, I cannot promise that. I don't know. But at least we bring it to the organizers and to Cedefop. Thank you very much. Yes, you can pass maybe to the last group, or the group that is in the back of the room. Thank you.
Hello. Our group is Estonian group. So we, for the first question, we wrote down some websites about different websites about labor market that are useful and can be put on this toolkit as well. The second question. The links that we recommended are already up to date and are taken care of. So it's maybe it's just necessary just once a year to see if the link still works. So somebody can do that. Question number 3. How can LMI Toolkit be available to career practitioners? We thought it can be a part of a new workers program and also put the link of this toolkit to national guidance websites as well. And the last question, suggestions.
And may I just ask a question? What do you mean with a workers program? Or maybe I didn't understand you, I'm sorry. Yeah.
When a new worker starts to work in a field, so maybe this can be one part of like introduction to this field.
Okay, yeah, thank you, yeah.
And suggestions, translation was already mentioned, and we also talked about that the translation, it's better if Cedefop would organize the translation, so it avoids that there are different translations in one country used. And more interactive tests, for example, the modules that we found some tasks, some tests, if these could be in more interactive way, it will be more user-friendly.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. And actually, this is, the toolkit is also linked to the handbook and the training manuals, and the training manuals have exercises and things. So maybe we should find a way of making the linkage is also more in this LMI
yes.
topic. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Thank you very much. Maybe the next.
Okay. First, this is a preliminary opinion of this group based on what we've seen so far. I mean, we haven't been able to explore this in any detail. Maybe I'll start with the question number 4, which is the core question. And actually, we had our doubts if it's actually a toolkit, and what do we mean by what do people expect when they hear word toolkit? And that's something which is very, very practical. Our first reaction was that it should be very practical and that you can use and build something out of it. I would say this looks more like a framework or guidelines. And that's one thing. It's not so much a toolkit, but more like a guideline, which is not a bad thing. It still can be very useful. The other thing is where we had our doubts about the intended target group. We think this is way too high level and not that useful for the practitioner in the field.
Not for a daily user.
Yes, not for, I mean, my client is a high school teacher who is maybe teaching maths, and the other part of the job is career guidance, teacher in the school. This is too generic, too high level. They need ready solutions, not some kind of conceptual thinking. I'm looking at this toolkit and I would say I'm the primary target group of that as a designer or methodological support agent in the national system. So we really have our problem with the intended target group. And there are 2 ways how to go ahead. One way is to say, well, and change the target group. Say, look, this is for someone else. It's a very useful resource, but let's not pretend this is for teachers or practitioners in the school. The other way, which is much more difficult, and we're not so sure how to proceed, but Cedefop has to decide, is to change the content so that it is really very practically useful for these practitioners in the field. And we felt it's too much of a challenge, honestly. So that's about how for the further development suggestions. And
yes,
out of that,
maybe just reacting upon that, I think it's very valuable and very important, and I think it also corresponds a little bit to you have to make sure at the level it is written now, who is it targeted for, and also position it in the right way.
Okay.
And maybe it's still indeed a little bit, well, if you mean career practitioner, what kind of career practitioners? And then as an alternative suggestion, maybe turn it more practical. But we think the handbook and the training material, well, the training materials are more trainer material, but the handbook has a lot of more hands-on cases. These are maybe more practical than this toolkit, but it's very valuable. Thank you.
Yes, I mean, this was from like 2 minutes of clicking around.
Yes,
the other thing, we had one practitioner in our group, real person from the field, and she said, exactly, she said, oh, actually, these two resources look interesting, not this toolkit, the other two that you referred. So there is some practical thing there. So, and coming back to the question number 3, how to make available this toolkit to the practitioners, well, one radical suggestion was, well, let's not make it available, because what's the point? But it is, the practitioners are very different. Some of them are really on a very practical level, but some of them like to conceptualize. They like to have a bigger picture. They like to have, more information. So we found that it can be made available as useful to know, or good to know, or interesting to know basis. So we should maybe include that in like our networks, or in our newsletters, say, look, Cedefop has made this beta version available, please have a look, and maybe you can find something useful for yourself. But we had our reservations that we should now go ahead and market it as the thing that you can really take and do and build stuff in your daily practice. So that was one thing. Yes, and again, coming back, that it's more of a toolkit or a guideline for people who design these kind of things nationally, who make labor market information available.
Okay.
Number 2 was how to make these national resources and links up to date. We didn't think it's not that much of a challenge, I think. Yes, we need to have some kind of first exercise, which we have started now by writing down some resources for our countries. And then, I don't know, Cedefop has to decide that. It maybe we can include that as, maybe your guidance can do that once a year. I mean, it needs to be looked at once a year, not more.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not that much of a challenge, we thought.
It's still it's still in a development process. So I think it needs to be reflected upon, and so
yeah.
How it's going to be organized.
And we have some preliminary list of resources for a number of countries around this table.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much. And then last but not least. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to say we agree completely with the last group. That was exactly the direction we went in to. If we thought about it in terms of a practitioner, there's sort of 2 risks. There's one, the practitioner sort of clicks on it and has to click, 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 and it's not what it says on the tin. But the second point was made was the practitioners are being inundated with resources which are being the definitive resource which they should look at, and they're getting more and more skeptical about whether or not they would do it. So it could actually be harmful when something comes along which actually can do this. They say, been there before. And we did think, exactly the same as the last group, if you're clear on the type of the practitioner being targeted, it's someone, in sort of technical terms, it would be a super user, wouldn't it? It would be somebody with special responsibility for LMI, or developing a project, or in some way linking, if nationally something's set up with how to use LMI, and they want to think about how do you integrate it in practice, because we were saying the examples now of a number of countries have got fantastic open and linked data, Their big problems are how to integrate it into practice when people have got very busy sort of lives, professional lives. And if you target those, it's possible to say, reverse the sort of direction, and in most cases, practitioners would use some sort of national site, and there could be something to the side which says, if you're particularly interested in this or particularly interested in that, what's happening in other countries, go to the Cedefop site. And the Cedefop site, we also felt, ought to have some value added, because the problem that bedevils the sort of national reporting and information going forward is, what will go forward as good information will be, because it's part of your project outcomes, to say you've disseminated it, people will put things on the Cedefop site. So it will say, this is an example of use of labour market information and so on. And unless there's somebody there saying, this is a particularly good example, or this links to that example, or how it's, you know, people are, even the specialist is going to find it irritating if they've just got a big long list with no value added to what's actually happening with regard to the LMI and the challenges that are actually being faced. And I do think, you know, if there was some sort of commentary on that, you know, the problems you face, a case study of somewhere like Norway where it's almost impossible to believe you could have more information than they had, and the practitioners were using it, but they were struggling because they were having to struggle as individuals. So they've moved to a system whereby they are producing information and mediating it to try and bring it down to manageable proportions so practitioners can do something about it. Now that seems as though they're the sorts of messages which would be really useful. You know, like in the UK with regard to their labour market information for all, you know, is an app which is actually developed. You might say it's because there's a fragmented system, but it's developed within each separate system. So higher education use LMI for all in a completely different way from FE colleges, in a completely different way from the public employment services. But that's the direction in which you would want to go. You'd want to tailor it. You'd want people to be personalizing it for the type of provision. Whereas in order here, you have to generalize. You have to say what's happening in the UK. Okay, the UK...
Well, I think it's not been decided. So we're in a development project. So
no, but all I meant is, but it's the problems. If you follow this model...
But these concerns are very interesting. And also you already, while you're explaining, you're already giving some kind of suggestions of way to go to make it more...
But I do think, you know, I mean, this
effective.
is fundamental. And I'd like to sort of declare an interest, as sort of Martina would testify. You know, Cedefop 20 years ago, we had a virtual community which was looking for guidance practitioners with this target group. We had LMI information and things like that. And it was used by people, but it was very specialist. You know, what it didn't do, and which none of the virtual communities did, and there were 35, I think, you know, they couldn't reach the practitioners because, you know, there's too much information for them, and that's not their main job. It's that they would be specialist sort of users. So, I mean, it is that sense where, you know, these things have a sort of life of their own, in a sense of, you know, you say it's for practitioners, so you've got to do something as it's practitioners. Now, I would say you would be doing well if you got 1% of practitioners ever clicked on this, you know, and it's that sort of thing. So if you back off that and say, well, you know, we'll learn the lessons of, you know, it's an institutional memory. It's not even someone else. Cedefop have tried this. Go back and say, let's aim to be the specialist users. Let's listen to those messages.
That's an opportunity, I think. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you all for your valuable contributions, for your active participation, and I wish you a good continuation of the conference, and maybe we'll see each other somewhere else. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.